It's my inspiration.
That's very sweet.
It's all art from, well, this one's from upstairs, but this one is from my original Gita.
Oh, that's right.
Full use 15?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari
Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Giridharadhari.
Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari
Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Giridharadhari.
Yashodanandana Gaj Jana Ranjana
Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana.
Yashodanandana Gaj Jana Ranjana
Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna
Vajrakacharya Asatara Shitashi Shrimati His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada
Jai.
Hail Vishnupada Paramhamsa Vajrakacharya Asatara Shitashi Shrimati His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki
Jai.
Yananta Koti Vishnapanti Ki
Jai.
Swami Vikta Bhaktavinda Ki
Jai.
Grantaraj Shrimadbhagavatam Ki
Jai.
Gaura Premananda
Haribo.
All grace assembled.
Hare
All
Krishna.
grace assembled.
Hare Krishna.
All grace assembled.
Hare
All
Krishna.
grace to Shri Guru
Hare
and
Krishna.
Gauranga. Jai. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So welcome to the Shrimadbhagavatam class, the morning class at Devasadan Mandir, ISKCON Detroit. We are reading from Canto 1. Canto 1 is quite thick, so we'll be here for some time. So today we're going to be reading from Canto 1, Chapter 5, Text 3. Correct? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayam Namaskritya.
Narayana Namaskritya.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Tato Jayudirye.
Tato Jayamudire.
Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu.
Nashtaprayeshu Adreshu.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke.
Bhagavate Uttama Sloke.
Bhaktir Bhavati Neshtaki.
Bhakti Roti Neshtaki.
Hare Krishna. So again, we're reading from Canto 1, Chapter 5, Narada's Instructions on Shrimadbhagavatam, text number 3. Jinasitam susmanpanam. Jignasitam susampanam. Apite mahad abhutam.
Apite Mahad Adbhutam.
Kritvan Bharatam Yashtvam. Kritvan Bharatam Yashtvam. Sarvartha Paribrimhitam.
Sarvartha Paribrimhitam.
Jignasitam susamanpanam.
Jigyasitam Susampannam.
Apite mahad abhutam.
Apite Mahad Adbhutam.
Kritvan Bharatam Yastvam.
Kritvan Bharatam Yastvam.
Sarvartha Paribrimhitam.
Sarvartha Paribrimhitam.
Jignasitam susamanpanam.
Jigyasitam Susampannam.
Apite mahad abhutam.
Apite Mahad Adbhutam.
Kritvan Bharatam Yastvam.
Kritavan Bharatam Yastvam.
Sarvartha Paribrimhitam.
Sarvartha Paribrimhitam.
Anyone would like to read?
Jigyasitam Susampannam.
Jignasitam susampanam.
Apite Mahad Adbhutam.
Apite mahad abhutam.
Kritavan Bharatam Yastvam.
Kritavan Bharatam Yastvam.
Sarvartha Paribrimhitam.
Sarvatar Paribrimhitam.
Jignasitam susampannam.
Jignasitam susampanam.
Apite mahad abhutanam.
Apite mahad abhutam.
Savan Bharatam Yastavat
Kritavan Bharatam Yastvam
Sarvata Paripurhitam
Sarvartha Paribrimhitam
Jignasitam,
Jigyasitam
fully inquired,
Fully
inquired,
Susampanam,
Susampanam
Sampanam,
well versed,
well-versed,
Api,
Api,
in spite of
in
in
spite
spite
of
of
Te,
your
Mahat Abutam,
Mahatadbhutam
Mahatabutam,
great and wonderful,
great and wonderful,
Kritvan,
Kritavan
Kritavara,
prepared,
prepared,
Bharatam,
Bharatam,
the Mahabharat,
the Mahabharata,
Yatvam,
Yatvam,
what you have done,
what you have done,
Sarvartha,
Sarvartha
Artatha,
including all sequences,
including all sequences,
Paribrimhitim,
Paribrimhitam
elaborately explained.
elaborately explained.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. Translation. Your inquiries were full and your studies were also well fulfilled. And there is no doubt that you have prepared a great and wonderful work, the Mahabharata, which is full of all kinds of Vedic sequences, elaborately explained. Please repeat. Your inquiries were full.
Your inquiries were full,
And your studies were also
and your studies were also
well fulfilled.
well fulfilled.
And there is no doubt
And there is no doubt
that you have prepared
that you have prepared
a great and wonderful work,
a great and wonderful work,
the Mahabharata,
the Mahabharata,
which is full of all kinds
which is full of all kinds
of Vedic sequences,
of Vedic sequences,
elaborately explained.
elaborately explained.
Purport. The despondency of Vyasadeva was certainly not due to his lack of sufficient knowledge, because as a student, he had fully inquired about the Vedic literatures, as a result of which the Mahabharata is compiled with full explanation of the Vedas. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yukta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sujiva Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Srite Devi Parnamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavad Vashata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So just going to read the translation one more time. Your inquiries were full, and your studies were also well fulfilled. And there's no doubt that you have prepared a great and wonderful work, the Mahabharata, which is full of all kinds of Vedic sequences elaborately explained. So, here Narada Muni is speaking. we see in this chapter Narad's instructions on Srimad Bhagavatam. So we're going to hear. So, Hare Krishna, thank you for this opportunity to speak at Srimad Bhagavatam and to review this wonderful, great writings that have been given to us by Vyasadeva, and we will eventually learn what is going to satisfy him. So just reviewing a little bit and going back so we understand the flow of Bhagavatam. So in chapter 4, probably the last 10 to 15 verses, it was discussed this dissatisfaction. This Vyasadeva had such dissatisfaction after writing all the Vedas. You know, he wrote Upanishads, Vedas, all the Vedanta sutras and so forth. And even towards the end, we hear about, towards the end of chapter 4, we hear about, okay, he wrote all the Vedas, but then he also divided the Vedas into 4 different parts, hoping that it will be easier for everyone to understand. You know, we talked about how Vyasadeva, he could see what the future situation is going to be in this age of Kali Yuga as it's approaching, what's going to be happening. And even then, not fully satisfied and so forth, then he started to write this Mahabharata. Now, in going back into chapter 4, in text 24, he talks about a stricture, or there's like a rule that was stated, that those who are not qualified as brahmanas should not learn the Vedas, right? So Srila Prabhupada, so those who are brahmanas, they feel like only we can study the Vedas, right? We have that right, that birthright to be able to study the Vedas, right? I'm a brahmana, I can study the Vedas and stuff. But Srila Prabhupada explains that there's so many wrong interpretations of this, and it's interpreted in different ways. But there's even some class that talk about, they actually kind of revolt against this thinking as well, too. They're thinking that, you know, what are you talking about? I can read the Vedas too, right? What is this injustice? You can't be, you know, you don't have to be a brahmana to read the Vedas. It's available to everybody and stuff. I can read it as well too. So you have one side that's like, no, only brahmanas can read it, you know, by birth. And then you have the other side that anyone can read it. So Srila Prabhupada says actually both of them are misguided.
Okay.
So, and why is this? If we think about the subject matter of the Vedas, right? They're so complex, so large, so vast, that even Krishna was had to explain it to Lord Brahma. If Krishna has to explain it to Lord Brahma, then what to expect for people like us? Right? And stuff. So, you know, how are we going to be able to understand it? Not only understand it, but apply it into our lives. How are we going to do this, right? And understand that by only people with exceptional, so this knowledge here, it can only be understandable with through people who have exceptionally good qualities, or that they're situated so nicely in the mode of goodness, right? Now, unless you're in the mode of goodness, you're not able to understand this. But, you know, so we're in Kali Yuga. How much mode of goodness is there?
0.
People, even if there is mode of goodness, it's going to be mixed, right, with ignorance and passion. These modes are very strong, you know, and we read in Bhagavatam that the quality of the people even, their minds are diminishing, their memories are diminishing, they're not able to retain information or understand it. So, you know, for this present age, this mode of goodness is non-existent.
It's fractional.
It's very fractional, very fractional. But so, Vyasadeva, he's like, yes, this is going to happen and it's going to get worse. So he divided the Vedas into 4. He wrote it down so it doesn't have to be verbally spoken, because if someone tells you something, how long is it before you're gonna forget it, right? So he wrote it down, he broke it up into 4, he even disseminated it to his disciples. So here, give the Vedas out to those. But still, those Vedas are massive because it contains all knowledge of everything and anything, material and spiritual knowledge. Everything we need to know in order to survive in this material world is given in the Vedas. So, because of this massive amounts of knowledge, the theme of this knowledge, though, at the end of the day, right, is to surrender unto God. This room could be filled with the Vedas, right? This huge room and stuff. But the main point, the main principle is to surrender unto God. And he knew that this, in the age of Kali, with people being covered in passion and ignorance, even though it's going to be divided into 4, people are not going to be able to absorb it, right? Even if I give you 1/4 of the Vedas to try to understand, it's going to be very difficult to understand, right? So, because of this, and because everyone in Kali Yuga is technically a Shudra, and are not going to be able to have this quality of goodness to understand, out of his compassion for us, he compiled the teachings of the Vedas into a great literature called the Mahabharata. Okay? So from this massive Vedas to even the divided Vedas comes the Mahabharata. So it's getting into portions of a portion of a portion. So now this Mahabharata is a compilation of stories, right? Many stories. And as written in Bhagavad Gita, for the women, the laborers, the friends of the twice born, and so forth, born in Brahminical families. They may be born into Brahminical families even in this day and age, but they are not in the same quality as their forefathers used to be, right? Because of this mode of passion and ignorance. These qualities of pureness, such as like honesty, cleanliness, austerity, these are also very much diminished in this age of Kali Yuga. So for such people, he wrote the Mahabharata, because how are you going to understand these Vedas, right? So, what he has done, as Srila Prabhupada has explained, is that all the intricacies of the Vedas, right, is systematically explained in the Mahabharata to give us some chance to understand it. Right? So even in the purport today, as we read, right, the Vedic sequence is elaborately explained. So he has systematically explained the Vedas within the Mahabharata. Now, the purpose of the Mahabharata is to administer the purpose of the Vedas. So the purpose of the Vedas is to surrender unto God. As we read the Mahabharata, we'll notice that also we're going to have to surrender to the will of God, right? So, and in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has clearly explained the purpose of the Vedas, right? In the verse 15:15, which we've spoken about, comes up quite often in this particular, in these particular chapters, the beginning chapters of Shrimadbhagavatam. Sarvasya chaham ridhi sanivisto mata smirtir yahanam apohanam cha vedascha sarver aham eva vedo vedanta krit veda ved eva chaham. So Krishna says that I'm seated in everyone's heart, and from me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So Krishna is the cause. And by the Vedas, I am to be known. This is the purpose. By the Vedas, I am to be known. What is to be known? We have to know about Krishna. And what is that knowledge? Is to surrender unto Krishna. So, through the Vedas, though, indirectly, however, this knowledge is being given to us because so much knowledge is given to us, material, spiritual, as we said. So Krishna, though, like when Vyasadeva was writing it down, although he's, giving us information given to us by Krishna, it wasn't directly about Krishna, right? So now, in the Mahabharata, right, at the very end of Mahabharata, what is spoken?
Bhagavad Gita.
Bhagavad Gita is spoken. And who speaks it? Krishna is speaking it. So here, Bhagavad Gita is spoken by Krishna. Krishna is speaking the Bhagavad Gita. In 2.5 hours, Krishna tells us everything we need to know, right? He's God. He can tell us everything we know. So from the Vedas that can fill this room, right, down to Mahabharata, which is a compilation of all the stories, at the very end, he gives us the Bhagavad Gita in 2.5 hours to know everything we need to know about the Vedas, right? So do you see how this is like, because of knowledge, because of the compassion, and because of the lack of inability of mankind in Kali Yuga is diminishing, right? The memory is diminishing. So the knowledge of the Vedas is also coming into a more concise format, hopefully for us to be able to understand it, right? So now Krishna gives this Bhagavad Gita, and it's for all people. Doesn't matter where you're from, who you are, what you practice. It's for all people, for all time. It is a timeless. It is not like relevant only for 500 years ago or 200 years ago. It's relevant today, and it will be relevant tomorrow as well too. So it's for all people, for all time, and for all purposes. Regardless of your situation, right? Any question that you might have about life, there is a verse in Bhagavad Gita to explain it. Right? So all this knowledge is given to us through this Bhagavad Gita. Now, Mahabharata is also explaining to us all of this information of the Vedas, right? In many, many story forms, because in the age of Kali Yuga, people like stories. For them to listen to philosophy, it becomes very difficult, just and stuff. But hearing stories makes it interesting. Like my Prabhu teaches an MBA class, and in the class there's many case studies that are given, right? Stories about different businesses and what they're going through and stuff like that. And so for people that, in Kali Yuga with this dull intelligence, it's hard to accept and hard to understand. But as you start hearing these stories, right, it gives you different cases, right? Such and such happened in this particular relationship, between the Pandavas and the Kauravas, and this is what happened, and, this is the situation with Draupadi, or whatever comes up in Mahabharata, right? These different stories give us the problem, but then also we see that there's many different ways to solve these problems. Just like a case study, there could be 5-6 different opinions of how this problem should be saved or resolved and stuff. So these things also happen within the Mahabharata. And in this age of Kali, people will listen to that because it's almost like it's a drama, right? Like people love drama and stuff. So, and they have all kinds of opinions and how things should be done and so forth. So people become inspired. They listen to these stories and they start becoming more inspired. So for the unintelligent people of Kali Yuga, Ved Vyas included so many of these stories, and they're so captivating. I don't know, I probably will age myself at this point, but in the 1980s, they came out with the series, the Mahabharata series. It was actually aired in India, like on television, right? Like the TV series of the Mahabharata. And it was so fascinating. At that point, I didn't even know Hindi very well and stuff. I still don't know Hindi very well. But by watching that, not only did I learn Hindi, but it was so captivating to hear the stories of Krishna and the Pandavas and the Kauravas. And what's Duryodhana, how are we going to defeat Duryodhana, and all these things. So the whole India was captivated by that. And not only that, back in the 1980s, we were in India. I was born and raised here. So we would have to get bootleg copies of the VHS tapes from India so that we can watch the Mahabharata. But every week, right, a new tape would come out and we would have to try to find it. Like, it was almost like a black market of VHS at that time to get the tape in order to watch the Mahabharata because it was so interesting.
That's cool.
So Vyasadeva, he wrote this great historical epic, the Mahabharata, right? For all of us to try to understand what the Vedas are. Now, the Mahabharata has many different lessons in it. So, I have like a list of all the different lessons that come out of Mahabharata, so I just thought I would quickly go over it in the interest of time too. So, the Mahabharata, many profound lessons and moral teachings are there, and again, it is relevant for today. It is a very timeless classic. Even though the history took place so many years ago, it is still very much relevant today when we hear the stories. It can be applied in today's situation and into our own lives. One is the importance of dharma, or righteousness, right? So each character is faced, there's 225 characters in the Mahabharata. And each of these characters are placed in different moral dilemmas, right? Different situations. What is right versus what is easy versus what is wrong, right? So they're all in this process of making decisions. So how to align our lives and act in a way in which we're going on the right path, that we are following justice, that we're doing our duties. It may be difficult, but how to follow this righteous path, in order so that we can grow in spiritual peace and happiness, right? We can have spiritual growth. So this is one of the themes within the Mahabharata, is how to live our lives in the most righteous way. Then we see the power of karma, number 2. Actions lead to reactions. So by the choices that these individual characters, these individual personalities have made, whether it's good or bad, you see the consequences of it, right? There's so many little decision paths that are made within the Mahabharata. For example, Kauravas, their actions lead to their downfall, the choices that they decide to make, right? While the Pandavas, they were dedicated to doing the right thing no matter how difficult it was for them, right? Which eventually leads to their victory. So many specific examples are also there, but just going over. The Mahabharata is 100,000 verses, so we cannot go over each and every little thing.
Wow.
So it also teaches us the importance of self-control and discipline. So the Mahabharata, many of these characters are faced with different challenges and so forth, but you can see through their self-discipline, the control. Like Arjun has so much struggle, right? And faces so many challenges, internal conflicts, but through self-discipline and through control, right? And through the teachings of Krishna, he helps him, right? To understand the self-discipline and control and how he can go about his life. It also gives us the complexity of the human nature, right? Humans are not black and white. There's always the gray in between and stuff. So all of these characters, when they're challenged, there is right ways, but there's so many different paths that these individuals can take. Like Karna. He was very noble, but loyal to the Kauravas. And Duryodhan, who was kind of like the evil individual within the stories of the Mahabharata, right? He was kind of the villain. But even though he was very favorable to them, but he was also driven by the desire for justice, to do things in the proper way too. But there was so much complexity in his character, right? So this is also, if we look at each individual character of the Mahabharata, there's a lot of complexity in their human nature, which is true to this day. Also, the power of knowledge and wisdom. The Mahabharata, right, shows us the importance of this knowledge. The whole Bhagavad Gita is given within the Mahabharata. And the Gita is full of knowledge of everything we need to know in order to live our lives in Dharma, in order to live our lives in the correct way, to follow the righteous path, and to make spiritual growth. All of this is given within the Mahabharata. It also talks about the roles of fate, free will, the modes of material nature, and the will of the Lord. We see in Mahabharata, nothing happens without the will of the Lord. Right? Every step they take, even though they make a decision, the Lord's hand is in it. Right? How many times Krishna pops up? Or Krishna, hey, can you go talk to the assembly over here and help us, bring about peace? But no, then Duryodhana is like, no. So much drama is there. But everything happens, and we can see the individual characters, what modes of nature they're residing in, right? And so forth. So a lot of this is explained within the Mahabharata. Leadership and the burden of power, right? What does it mean to be a good leader? You see Yudhishthira and the type of leader he is, right? But then you also see Duryodhana and how much power and leader he wants to be, but the burden of power also, and how it falls on him. So you see these different interplays. For those of anyone studying leadership, this is a great book to study. It'll give you everything you need to know on how to become a great leader. Also, the cost of revenge and hatred, what that can do to an individual, and how to, when this desire of hatred comes in our heart, the desire of revenge, this force of ego comes within our heart and our being, what happens to families? What can happen to kingdoms, to nations, to countries, right? We can see all of this stuff within the Mahabharata. What are the alternatives? The importance of family relationships and relationships in general, whether it's through friendship, through brothers, through husband and wives, right? These tensions, but then also the trust, loyalty, and sacrifice you have within these relationships, and how to perfect these relationships. That's also taught in the Mahabharata. In the Mahabharata, we hear about detachment and selflessness, right? So Krishna, when he's saying the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, right, he's emphasizing this nishkam karma, this importance of doing one's duty without expecting any, or without the attachments to any of these results. Arjuna, you fight. Don't worry about the results. You fight as a duty to me, as a sacrifice to me, right? The value of truth and integrity, right? So much needed in this day and age, right? Truth and integrity is being tested time and time again, and we see that it was tested in Mahabharata as well too, and stuff. So how to understand and how to adhere to truth and to have integrity in one's life, that is also given to us in Mahabharata. And finally, the nature of war and peace. This is another lesson within Mahabharata. War is very tragic and no doubt brings about pain and loss to all sides. There's no winner in war, right? So it is very much a last resort. And it's also taught to us that war is only necessary, that war should be very much a last resort and undertaken only to protect justice and righteousness. It should not be used. Every other method. We see that Krishna does everything possible, right? The Pandavas are trying every route possible to peace, right? And at the very end, they have to go into war. But even at that time, right, so much pain and loss is going to come there. Right? Krishna tells us how to deal with this pain and loss as well too. So all of these are 12 different topics that I quickly went through. But these 12 topics, right, these are various lessons given to us in the Mahabharata. Now, Vyasadeva wrote down the Vedas, he told the story of Mahabharata, and now Narada is in front of him, and he is dissatisfied, and Narada has told him, your inquiries were full, your studies were also well fulfilled. There's no doubt that you have prepared this great and wonderful work, right? The Mahabharata, which is full of all kinds of Vedic sequences, elaborately explained. You've done all this work, right? And you're unhappy. And why is that? So here's the difference between Mahabharata and Shrimadbhagavatam. Okay? So these are some of the differences. Our acharyas are, can better explain this and stuff like that. So here we have the Mahabharata on one side, and now, in order for Vyasadeva to fill his heart with the satisfaction, Shrimadbhagavatam is going to be born. So what is the difference? Mahabharata are for those who may not even be on the platform of Dharma, Artha, Moksha, Kama, or may not even know anything about the Vedas. They can study the Mahabharata and start understanding a little bit, right, of what to do in their lives, how to behave. Or if you're even on the platform and you want righteousness, you want Artha, liberation, Moksha, all these things, then Mahabharata, by reading and understanding it and studying it, will help you purify yourself, right? By reading it, you become purified. Because in Kali Yuga, we have very little intelligence, unfortunately. Even the smartest people are not as smart as they used to be, right? And stuff. So for them, the study of Mahabharata, it gives them some direction, purpose, path, and so forth. Now, Shrimadbhagavatam is beyond this. It's beyond liberation. It's beyond Dharma, Artha, Moksha, Kama, right? And stuff. It is the Paramhamsa Samhita. It is beyond, it's transcendental in knowledge. Okay? So all this knowledge, it transcends all this knowledge. That is Shrimadbhagavatam. Mahabharata tells us to surrender to the will of the Lord, who's all-powerful. Right? This is the primary message, to surrender unto the Lord. Just surrender to the will of the Lord. Right? But what does Shrimadbhagavatam do? Shrimadbhagavatam, even the will of the Supreme Lord is also bent by the will of his pure devotees. Right? So even Krishna, right, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he may desire one thing, but because of the will of his pure devotees, he can even be changed. Right? Here in Mahabharata, we just surrender to the will of the Lord. But in Shrimadbhagavatam, the devotees are the ones who control the will of the Lord, the pure devotees. Right? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So, Mother Yashoda and Lord Damodar. Krishna wants to eat the butter and break the pots and do all this thing. That's his desire, right? But Mother Yashoda, Mother Yashoda wants to bind Krishna, but how can you bind the Supreme Lord, right? He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He can't be bound by anyone. But he lets Mother Yashoda bind him because of her purity and her love and her devotion. So the devotee of the Lord can bend the will of the Lord, right? So this is a different level. Shrimadbhagavatam is in a completely different level. Yeah, right? Shrimadbhagavatam is there, beyond the Lord's will, the devotee's will is greater, right? The pure devotee's will. In Mahabharata, Krishna is the central character, right? Krishna is one of the heroes in Mahabharata. He's one of the central characters. But he's not sufficiently glorified, or we don't know much detail. He's actually only experience in this Ashwarya Bhav, this awe and reverence, right? He's in royal dress in many portions of the Mahabharata. You know, he's comes into the royal assembly and so forth. He's very much in a specific mood within the Mahabharata. And we don't know much detail about him, right? Sure, he's cousin, friends, and so forth. But Shrimadbhagavatam, Krishna is the central character in Shrimadbhagavatam as well. But there's so much detail given to us about Krishna. Just within, what was it, the second chapter when we talked about all the incarnations of Krishna? So much detail was given to us, right? And stuff like that. The energy of Krishna, the incarnations of Krishna. Not only this, as we continue in Srimad Bhagavatam, we see Krishna in all of his rasas, right? In all of his different relationships and so forth. So much detail is going to be given to us about who Krishna is, right? So this is the difference. In Mahabharata, we see Krishna as a character. He's a hero for sure, but we're not given so much detail about him and so forth. He's not glorified as much. He's glorified, but not as much as we will see in Srimad Bhagavatam. In Mahabharata, Mahabharata is one story actually. The entire Mahabharata is one story, but it has many different subplots that are given. But at the very end of the story, right, we understand and that we have to surrender to this will of God, right? That we surrender to Krishna. That's the principle of the Mahabharata. The object of the story, the end, a conclusion of the story is that we surrender to Krishna. Now, in Srimad Bhagavatam, it is many, many stories that are given. There's so many different dozens of stories are given within Srimad Bhagavatam. Each story leads to this central theme of surrender. But not only surrender, but to surrender and how to participate in pure devotional service unto Krishna. This pure devotional service is given within every story of Srimad Bhagavatam. How do I serve Krishna? So we know who is Krishna, how to serve Krishna, right? More details about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the glorification of Krishna is in Srimad Bhagavatam. So therefore, after writing Mahabharata, which definitely talks about Krishna, contains all the information of the Vedas, right? There's story of, and like different, all these characters, 225 characters of the Mahabharata to explain to us what all, you know, what needs to be done, how to live our lives, all these lessons and stuff. Still, Vyasadeva is unsatisfied. And that is how Srimad Bhagavatam will come about, right? So, the details in Srimad Bhagavatam discuss pure devotion to Krishna. It shows us the many rasas of Krishna. These topics are not covered in Mahabharata. So Srimad Bhagavatam is going to further explain, further give us detail, further glorify Krishna. So Narada Muni, you know, he's praising Vyasadeva. You've done so much work, right? So much effort, so much you've done, you know, by writing all this down, by, you know, creating in this Mahabharata, 100,000 verses of the Mahabharata, right? Even to write that down, the story. But the main thing has not been written yet. And that's where Srimad Bhagavatam will come in. So as we continue to learn about this chapter 5, the instructions of Narada Muni, we'll get more and more, Narada's instructions on Srimad Bhagavatam. We'll learn more about this glorious text of Srimad Bhagavatam and how to take part in it. So hopefully this helps to bring, we're coming to like the pinnacle, the cream of the crop, the nectar. It's coming up soon. So this is how it is being explained. So.
Then my question, how long did Vasudeva live to be able to do all that? Do we know that at all?
The exact age of Vyasadeva?
I mean, what yuga was he born in? Or was
Krishna
it?
Dvaipara, Vyasadeva? He lived a
long time. These are
Like
these
tens of
sages.
thousands of years that age?
Yeah, I mean, people in Satya Yuga, right? They live 100,000 years.
Right.
You know, at time of Treta Yuga, they lived 10,000 years. Even in Dwapar Yuga, they lived 1,000 years. It's only in the Skull Yuga we have 100 years max.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are fortunate to a little bit more, but
Yeah.
back then they used to live. I mean,
So that's how he was able to
yes.
study this and compile
Yes.
this, because when you live for eons, you have time
Yeah.
to study everything.
But you also have to understand that Vyasadeva was also the literary incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Okay.
So he was an empowered.
More than just, okay.
Yeah, so, you know, for him to be able to do this is obviously an ordinary individual has no possibility,
Mhm.
but he has that empowerment and ability to do it.
All right. Thank you much, Chief.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was just sort of thinking about
we
that.
can't put our mundane logic, our you know, at least my little intelligence.
Bhishma, he's like old, right?
Yeah.
He lived for like 3-4 generations, 5 generations, something like that. So he lived that much.
Uh-huh.
So, and now Vyasadeva, he's older than he's supposed to be, I think older than Bhishma or something
Yeah.
like that. So it's like he's very...
Okay.
And Bhishma Pita, he had the ability, he got to choose when he leaves his body. So he can live for more and more. But
A lot.
yeah, but as you know, in Mahabharata it comes on how he passes and so forth. But yeah,
So the Mahabharata ends and the Gita begins as a second book?
No, same.
it's in the same,
The Gita
at
is
the
included
end,
in the
it's
Mahabharata?
the,
Yes,
the
episode.
conclusion
Yes.
Huh.
towards the end.
Episode in the Mahabharata.
So yes, it is an episode because even after the Bhagavad Gita is spoken in the Mahabharata, right? Then we see also what happens to the kingdom afterwards, and so forth. And because at that, then the kingdom goes to Yudhishthira, right? And then what happens? What does? So it continues on, but the cream of the Mahabharata,
Yeah,
you
I
could
can
say, is
feel
the
that.
Bhagavad Gita.
Like
Okay.
Mataji said, like there are a lot of stories in Mahabharata, right? So now those stories are very nice stories, very fantastic stories. But sometimes what happens, even hearing those stories, people might not get the right moral of the story, right?
Okay.
So, but if you are suppose a person who is looking towards earning a lot of money, you'll only learn that kind of moral from the story because you are looking for money.
Yeah.
And so if you are looking for power, you are kind of looking for those kind of moral and those kind of things, and you will be looking those kind of characters, and you will be interested in. But there are a lot of characters, and there are like almost everything will be there.
Yeah.
So, but Shrimadbhagavatam is like, you have...
It's specifically.
Yeah. And it started how? Like when the Sonaka rishis, those rishis asked, like, what is the absolute good and absolute welfare for the people in general? That is how it is started.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
really-
Yeah.
There's another Gita in the Mahabharata too, isn't it? The Uddhava Gita?
That's in Srimad Bhagavatam.
Oh, that's in Shrimadbhagavatam. Oh, okay.
I believe it's in Srimad Bhagavatam.
So, which is more important to read? The Mahabharata or the Bhagavatam? Like, because I have an abridged version of the Mahabharata at home, but I don't have time to read both and the Gita.
Shrimadbhagavatam.
Srimad Bhagavatam.
Okay.
We are actually extremely fortunate to be able to have the Srimad Bhagavatam and be able to read it. And because of our disciplic succession, because of the previous acharyas, we have the greatest fortune in the universe to have the ability to even understand, even if we understand 1% of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's amazing.
Okay.
Our life is fulfilled. Because this is so powerful. There's nothing in the world that you can read that is more powerful than Srimad Bhagavatam. Because this is Krishna, right? Who he is, the details, what is there to be known in this world? It's Krishna. To surrender to Krishna, to know Krishna, to love Krishna, to develop this. This is what's given to us in Shrimad Bhagavatam.
No, we are
Rest of it is just-
Vyasadeva story, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was not satisfied.
It's not, he has all knowledge of everything spiritual and material at his fingertips. It's still not satisfied. What satisfies him is, what will satisfy him is this glorification of Krishna. If we know nothing else, you don't need to know calculus. You don't need to know anything, right? If we just know who Krishna is, that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? And to understand who Krishna is, who am I and what's my relationship, life is fulfilled, right? So this is the knowledge of all knowledge. It's the king of all knowledge. Right?
So what need is there for any other book?
There's no need for any other book.
Okay.
No need for any other book. This
There
is
are
it.
very beautiful stories in Mahabharata, but Srimad Bhagavatam is like.
Like Prabhu said, people will pick and choose what they want, from the dharma, moksha, if they were looking for liberation, or if they're looking for, wealth, or this or that, or anything, they'll take it from Mahabharata, what they want to hear, but this is Krishna. Every story ends with pure devotional service. Every story ends with the surrender of Krishna. So Mahabharata is one story, right? And at the end, that is the principle. But, you go through the whole 100,000 verses. But this, every story, everything we're going to read, the conclusion will be Krishna.
Cool.
The love of Krishna. Yeah.
I can
You're on the
give-
right path. Keep it up.
I can give one a short story to give him an example.
Yes, please, please.
So it was a story. See, now the Pandavas are the brothers, right? Kauravas are the brothers. This much you know, right? So what happened? They played the dice game. They lost. Now they had to go in the forest, right? And now they are going in the forest, and now they don't have their their wealth and their enjoyment, not better food, forest, no nice shelter, right? And they are not kings anymore, so nothing royalty, right? Now Kauravas, they are not satisfied. They want to mock them, and they even, if they get chance, they want to even kill them. So that is how they are. So just to show off their wealth and show off their status, right? Now they planned a trip. Now they just wanted to show off, so they planned a camp nearby where the Pandavas are living. So they went with their royal army, had a nice picnic, nice food and all those, and they are trying to do their kind of show off. So that is how now they are living, right? Now what happens? A kind of a being, Gandharva, and he comes and he saws, nice food and a lot of enjoyment is happening. So he attacked them, all the Kauravas, defeated all of them, made them hostage and began to enjoy their food. Now Pandavas, they come to know about it, right?
Yeah.
And now the Pandavas' brothers are happy because they came to show off, and now they are getting the punishment, right? And now, but the Yudhishthira, the oldest brother, now he's kind of no, this is not the righteous. The brothers are our brothers. They are our brothers. He's saying the brothers are doing all those things, right? And he's saying they are our brothers. We have to save him. Just go and save him. Others brother won't listen because because their motive was not nice. They have never done anything nice, right? And now the Yudhishthira is having problem now. How do I convince my brothers to help them? And now how he says to his brothers is yes, I understand, they have done very, very bad things to us. But what is the most greatest satisfaction in the heart? When you are able to, how to save your enemies from the danger.
Yeah.
That will give you the better satisfaction than you seeing them in danger. That is what Yudhishthira said. And now the brothers started and went and fought with the Gandharva and saved all the. So these kind of stories are there, and now from this kind of story, you can get a lot of different kind of morals.
Yes,
But
yes.
the most important thing is like when we get to the Shrimadbhagavatam, it's clear, precise, and whatever the moral we have to learn is only there. So that means no misguidance. So a lot of different kinds of stories, very, very beautiful stories are there in Mahabharata, which is like, how do you say, kind of attractive.
Attractive.
Yeah,
They're fun.
attractive.
They're dramatic.
It's really fun if you like watch and all these things. But I mean, we are not just looking for just fun. Srimad Bhagavatam stories also a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Stories have not come. We are just in the first.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Just getting
There's
started.
12 cantos, so we have a long way to go.
We are just like, how do I say, in the beginning.
We're in the
not,
beginning.
Not like,
Still the introduction.
But even
kind of.
there's a, Srila Prabhupada, we should not jump to all the fun stories in Bhagavatam either.
Yeah.
There's a systematic way, right? Everything is very systematically explained so that it develops our heart, mind, and our soul to prepare to hear those types of stories,
Okay.
right? And stuff. If we jump all the way to there, to all the fun stories about Krishna and his childhood and this and that, like, we may not come to the correct conclusion, that this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead we're dealing with. We might just think it's a little boy or a teenager or this and that. So through reading Srimad Bhagavatam from first canto systematically all the way through, each story starts developing more and more and more knowledge of Krishna. And more. So it's important not to jump because all kinds of, it can be fun, but we should systematically study this.
Yes.
Well, that's
Right.
good.
And stuff. So, thank you. Thank you for this story.
Yeah.
It's so fun. Yeah,
I
there
just
is.
remember that. So.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Definitely.
It's fun.
So, if you have time, read Srimad Bhagavatam. If you have extra,
Like the
read
war
Srimad
between-
Bhagavatam. So,
I understand that during the war between the Kauravas and the Pandavas, they would take lunch breaks, and they would have lunch. They would have food together. And then they would start.
And they go back.
They would start the war back again.
That sounds
yeah.
like a civil
Well,
war.
because
Oh, that's how the Civil
the
War is.
rules of warfare are also given within the Vedas, right?
Okay.
How to conduct warfare and what is the purpose of war. And all of these things are given within the Vedas. This day and age, we don't see true warfare how it used to be, right? King against king, right? Kshatriya against Kshatriya. Face to face, you face your enemy. Now we have like drones flying and just bombing random places.
We're in air-conditioned
You don't even
buildings.
see where your enemies are coming from or what they look like or who they are, right? You don't have that look me in the eye and let's fight to bring righteousness and justice to the thing. So it's very different. It's very different.
Yeah.
These rules and regulations of how things are done, it's not fair. Although we may be enemies on the battlefield, when we come off the battlefield, right? Because we're each fighting for a specific purpose, but off the battlefield, yes, we can have lunch together, right? Because it's not about you and I, it's about the purpose, right? Like there's a whole information about a whole etiquette information, about how to do these things. Right?
Okay.
So, yeah. Welcome to Kali Yoga. Is there a song?
Thank you.